This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Max and Mia podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Mia. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We're really happy you're here.
So, quick question for you before we start. Be honest, how many times have you set a goal, felt super excited about it, and then a few days later, you just lost all your energy?
Oh, I feel that one deep in my soul. It happens to literally everyone, right? You wake up one morning full of motivation, ready to change your life, and then the next day you can't even get out of bed to start.
Exactly. And it's not because you're lazy or because something's wrong with you. It's actually something we all struggle with. And honestly, it can be really frustrating when you don't understand why it happens.
Totally. Maybe you wanted to start working out, or eating healthier, or finally learning English fluently. But somehow, the motivation just disappears. And then you start feeling guilty about it too.
Right. And that guilt makes everything even worse. So today, we're diving into something super useful: motivation, and more specifically, how to keep going even when you really don't feel like it.
Yes. And this topic is honestly perfect for practicing both your listening and your shadowing today. There's a lot of natural, everyday vocabulary coming up, so make sure you're paying close attention.
Exactly. Grab your headphones, get comfortable, and let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start with something that confuses a lot of people: the difference between motivation and discipline. A lot of us think they're the same thing, but they're really not.
Right, and I think that's actually the root of the whole problem. Motivation is that feeling, that spark of energy you get when you're excited about something. Discipline, on the other hand, is what keeps you going once that feeling is gone.
And motivation, by the way, is super unstable. It comes and goes depending on your mood, how much sleep you got, or even the weather. Some days you wake up feeling unstoppable, and other days you just don't want to do anything at all.
Exactly, and that's completely normal. But here's the thing. If you only rely on motivation, you're basically building your goals on something that isn't reliable. Discipline is more like a system, a routine you follow no matter how you feel that day.
That reminds me of something. When I started going to the gym last year, I used to wait until I felt ready to go. And guess what? I only went like twice a month.
That sounds familiar.
But then I changed my approach. I stopped waiting to feel motivated and just told myself, I'm going at 6 p.m. no matter what. That's discipline in action. And little by little, it stopped being a decision and became a habit.
That's such a good example. And I want to explain something real quick, because I know some of you might not be familiar with the word willpower. Willpower is basically your mental strength to resist temptation or push through something difficult, even when part of you wants to quit.
Right, and the tricky part is that willpower runs out throughout the day, kind of like a battery. That's why relying only on willpower or motivation isn't sustainable long term.
So the real question isn't, how do I get more motivated? It's, how do I build systems that don't depend on motivation at all? And that's exactly what discipline gives you.
I love that idea because it takes the pressure off. You don't need to feel amazing every single day. You just need a structure that carries you forward, even on your worst days.
Exactly. And we're going to talk more about those worst days a little later.
There's also something interesting here. A lot of people think disciplined people just have more willpower than everyone else, like it's some kind of superpower they were born with.
But that's not really true, is it? Most disciplined people just design their environment better. They remove obstacles before they even need willpower in the first place.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Let's say someone wants to stop scrolling on their phone before bed. Instead of relying purely on willpower, they could just leave the phone in another room at night. That way, they're not constantly fighting the temptation because it's simply not there.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So it's less about trying harder and more about making the right choice the easiest choice.
Exactly. That's such a great way to put it. And once you understand that, motivation becomes way less important because your surroundings are basically pushing you in the right direction automatically.
I think that's really freeing, honestly, because it takes some of the pressure off. You're not a weak person if you struggle with motivation. You might just need a smarter system.
Another thing worth mentioning is that discipline usually gets easier with time, even though people assume it stays equally hard forever. In the beginning, every single action requires effort, because you're basically fighting against old patterns.
But eventually, once something becomes a habit, it barely requires any willpower at all. Think about brushing your teeth. Nobody needs motivation for that anymore. It just happens automatically.
You're right. And that's the goal with anything we want to improve. In the beginning, it feels forced and uncomfortable, but if you stay consistent long enough, it eventually becomes just another normal part of your day.
Right, and that's really the heart of today's episode, moving from I need to feel like it to I have a system that works no matter how I feel. So let's talk about something that makes discipline way easier to build: small actions. So here's a mistake so many of us make. We decide to change our life, and we go all in from day one. New diet, new gym routine, new sleep schedule, all at once.
And it feels great for like 3 days, and then we completely burn out.
Exactly, burnout. That's actually a great word to explain. Burnout happens when you push yourself too hard for too long, and eventually your body and mind just can't keep up anymore. You feel exhausted, unmotivated, sometimes even a bit hopeless.
And that's usually because we start too big. The secret isn't doing something huge once. It's doing something small, consistently, every single day.
I read somewhere that if you want to build a reading habit, you shouldn't start by saying, I'll read 1 book a week. Instead, start with, I'll read 1 page a day. It sounds too easy, almost silly, but that's exactly the point.
It's funny because our brains resist big changes, but they barely notice small ones. 1 page doesn't feel threatening, so you actually do it. And once you're already reading, you often keep going anyway.
That's such a powerful idea, honestly. It's the same with exercise. Instead of saying, I'll work out for an hour, you could say, I'll do 5 minutes. Most days, once you start, you'll want to keep going. But even on the days you don't, you still showed up.
And that consistency matters way more than intensity. I think a lot of people underestimate how powerful small, repeated actions can be over time.
Definitely. It's like drops of water. 1 drop doesn't do much on its own, but if it keeps falling in the same place, eventually it can carve a hole into a rock.
That's such a nice way to put it. So, if you're listening right now and thinking about a goal you have, ask yourself, what's the smallest possible version of that action? Something so easy you almost can't say no to it.
And don't underestimate that. Small doesn't mean unimportant. Small means sustainable. And sustainable is what actually gets you results in the long run.
There's actually a concept for this that I really like. It's called compound growth, but applied to habits instead of money. Compound growth basically means something small keeps adding up on top of itself until eventually it becomes something huge.
Oh, like a snowball rolling down a hill, right? It starts tiny, but the more it rolls, the bigger it gets.
Exactly. 1% better every day doesn't feel like anything in the moment. But after a year of doing that, the difference is massive compared to where you started.
And I think the opposite is also true, unfortunately. Small negative habits pile up the same way. Like, one extra episode before bed doesn't seem like a big deal, but over months that adds up to lost sleep, lost energy, lost focus.
That's such a good point. So really, every small action, good or bad, is basically a vote for the kind of person you're becoming.
I love that phrase. A vote for who you're becoming. It makes even the tiniest choices feel meaningful, instead of pointless.
And I think that's exactly why small actions work so well. They're not just building a skill, they're slowly building your identity too. You stop being someone who wants to read more, and you actually become a reader just by repeating that tiny action over and over.
That shift from wanting to be something to actually being it, that's honestly where real change happens.
Okay, now let's talk about something everyone deals with, bad days. Because no matter how disciplined you are, there will be days where everything just feels heavier.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people feel guilty about that, like having a bad day means they're failing somehow.
Right, but that's just not true. Bad days are part of the process, not a sign that you're doing something wrong. The problem isn't having a bad day, it's how you react to it.
Exactly. Some people have one bad day and think, well, I already messed up, so I might as well give up completely. And that's what actually breaks the whole routine.
That's actually got a name, by the way. It's called the what the heck effect. Basically, once we break a habit once, we feel like the rest doesn't matter anymore. So we just abandon everything.
That happened to me with journaling. I missed one day, felt bad about it, and then didn't write again for like a month just because I felt like I'd already failed.
And that's such a common trap. The truth is, missing one day barely affects your progress. What actually affects your progress is missing day after day after that.
So, what can we actually do on those low energy days when everything feels hard?
Honestly, I think the key is lowering the bar, not eliminating the action completely. If your normal workout is 30 minutes on a bad day, maybe you just do 5. If you usually write a full page, maybe you just write 1 sentence.
That way, you're keeping the habit alive, even if it's in a smaller version. And that matters more than people realize, because it protects your identity as someone who's consistent.
Exactly. It's not really about the 5 minutes themselves. It's about proving to yourself that you didn't quit, even when things got hard.
I also think it helps to be a little more compassionate with yourself. You wouldn't talk to a friend the way you sometimes talk to yourself on a bad day, right?
True. And self-compassion isn't the same as making excuses. It just means understanding that you're human and that progress isn't a straight line. It goes up and down, and that's completely normal.
I also think it's useful to separate two things that often get mixed up: resting and quitting. Resting is part of a healthy routine, but quitting means giving up on the goal completely.
That's such an important distinction. If you're tired and you rest for a day, that's not failure. That's actually smart. Your body and mind need recovery too.
Right. The danger isn't the rest itself. It's when one day off quietly turns into a week, and then that week turns into never going back at all.
So maybe a good question to ask on a bad day is, am I truly exhausted, or am I just avoiding something uncomfortable? Because those two things need really different responses.
Exactly. If you're genuinely drained, rest without guilt. But if you're just avoiding discomfort, sometimes the best move is doing that tiny, reduced version of the habit anyway, just to keep the thread going.
And honestly, some of my proudest moments haven't been the days I felt amazing and productive. They've been the days I felt terrible and still managed to do something small anyway.
That's such a great mindset, because anyone can stay consistent when life is easy. The real growth happens in how you handle the hard days, not the good ones.
And I'd add one more thing here. Bad days also teach you something valuable about yourself, like which parts of your routine are too rigid, or which goals maybe weren't realistic in the first place.
That's a really good point. Instead of seeing a bad day purely as a failure, you can treat it as feedback, information you can actually use to adjust and keep moving forward smarter next time. Now, let's talk about something people often overlook: the people around you. Because your motivation and discipline don't exist in a bubble. They're influenced by your environment.
That's so true. If you spend time with people who complain all the time, who never follow through on anything, it's way easier to fall into that same pattern yourself.
Right? And on the other hand, if you're around people who are focused and consistent, that energy tends to rub off on you too. It's almost contagious in a way.
There's actually a term for that in psychology: social contagion. It basically means that behaviors, moods, and even habits can spread from person to person, kind of like an emotion you catch from being close to someone.
That explains so much. Like, have you ever been in a bad mood and then you spend time with someone super positive and suddenly you feel a little better too?
All the time, honestly. And it works the other way too. If everyone around you is negative about your goals, it becomes way harder to stay consistent.
That's why accountability is so powerful. Having someone who checks in on your progress or who's working toward a similar goal can make a massive difference.
Accountability basically means having some kind of responsibility toward someone else, not just yourself. It's harder to skip a workout when you know a friend is waiting for you at the gym.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean you need a huge support group. Sometimes just one person who believes in what you're doing is enough to keep you going on the harder days.
And I think it's also worth asking yourself, honestly, are the people I spend the most time with pushing me forward, or are they quietly holding me back?
That's a tough question, but such an important one. You don't have to cut people off dramatically, but you can definitely be more intentional about who you let influence you.
I think it also works the other way around, though. Sometimes we underestimate how much our own energy affects the people close to us, too.
Oh, that's true. If you show up consistent, positive, and focused, that can inspire the people around you without you even trying.
Exactly. So it's kind of a two-way street. You're influenced by your environment, but you're also quietly shaping it just by being who you are, day after day.
And communities matter here too, not just individual friendships. Being part of a group with a shared goal, like a running club, a study group, or even an online community, can completely change how consistent you are.
Definitely. There's something powerful about knowing you're not doing this completely alone. Even if nobody's physically with you, just knowing other people are working towards something similar can keep you going.
So, if you're listening and you feel like you've been trying to do everything by yourself, maybe that's actually part of the problem. Finding your people, even just one or two, can make a massive difference.
And it doesn't even have to be someone doing the exact same thing as you. Sometimes just having a friend who checks in and asks, "How's it going with that goal of yours?" is enough to keep you accountable.
That's so true. Just knowing someone's going to ask changes how seriously you take your own commitment. It's a small thing, but it adds real weight to what you're doing.
And on the flip side, if you notice that certain people constantly discourage you or make you feel silly for trying to improve, it might be worth having an honest conversation with them, or simply spending a little less time in that environment.
It's not about being harsh or dramatic. It's just about protecting your goals the same way you'd protect anything else that matters to you.
All right, I want to close this part with a little story that really sums up everything we've talked about today.
Picture two people who both decide on the exact same day that they want to learn English.
The first one is full of energy. On day 1, they study for 3 hours straight, watch English videos, write vocabulary lists, everything. They're completely obsessed with it.
But by the end of that first week, they're exhausted. Life gets busy again, motivation fades, and eventually they stop studying altogether. A few months later, they've basically forgotten most of what they learned.
Now, the second person takes a completely different approach. They only study for 15 minutes a day. No huge sessions, no pressure, just 15 minutes every single day, even on the days they don't feel like it.
6 months later, that second person is having real conversations in English, while the first one barely remembers where they left off.
And the difference wasn't talent or intelligence or even how much time they had available.
The difference was consistency. 15 minutes a day, repeated over and over, ended up building something way stronger than 3 intense hours that only happened once.
What's interesting is that in the moment, the second person probably didn't feel like they were doing much. 15 minutes can feel almost too small to matter.
Right. There was probably no dramatic moment, no big breakthrough, just a quiet, boring routine repeated again and again. And that's exactly why so many people give up on that approach too early. It doesn't feel impressive enough.
But 6 months later, the results speak for themselves. And I think that's the part people underestimate the most. Real change is usually invisible while it's happening and only becomes obvious after a long time.
It's a bit like planting a seed. You water it every day, and for a while it looks like absolutely nothing is happening underground. But if you keep showing up, eventually it breaks through the surface.
And that's basically the whole idea we've been building throughout this episode. Small, steady actions almost always beat big bursts of motivation that don't last.
So, let's bring everything together for a second, because we covered quite a lot today.
We started by separating motivation, which is a feeling, from discipline, which is a system. Then we talked about how small, repeated actions build way more than one huge, intense effort.
After that, we looked at how to handle bad days without letting one difficult moment turn into giving up completely. And we talked about how the people around us quietly shape our habits, for better or worse.
And finally, that little story about learning English showed all of that in action. Consistency, beating intensity, over and over again.
If you take just one thing away from this episode, let it be this. You're not going to feel motivated every day. And honestly, you don't need to. What actually moves you forward is showing up anyway, even in the smallest possible way.
Because motivation is temporary, but the habits you build, one small day at a time, those are the ones that actually stick around and change your life.
So if there's one thing we want you to take from today's episode, it's this. You don't need to feel motivated every single day to keep moving forward.
Exactly. Build small habits, be kind to yourself on the hard days, and surround yourself with people who support where you're trying to go.
And if we had to leave you with one final thought, it would be this. Progress isn't about being perfect. It's about refusing to disappear.
That's a good one. Keep showing up even in small ways, and over time, those small steps turn into real, lasting change.
Thanks so much for listening today. We really hope this episode gave you something useful to think about.
And remember, if you didn't understand every single word, that's totally okay. Go back, listen again, try shadowing some parts of it. That's exactly how you improve.
We'll see you in the next episode. Take care and keep going.
Bye, everyone.